Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and in this video I'd like to talk some more about Newbery medal winning books. And if you have stumbled onto this video because you were searching Newbery winners, I have a whole playlist of the videos that I've done so far on Newbery medal winning books through the decades. And this year in 2021, the 100th Newbery medal winning book was awarded, and so I decided several years ago that I wanted to read all the Newbery winners, but in the last couple of years I thought it would be fun to divide them up into decades and just talk about them in a video. So I hope you will check out the playlist. I will leave a link to it down below, and also at the end there'll be a card or something that you can click on if you want to see my videos that I've done so far. I think this is my 5th video, and rather than go in succession the way I was going from the 90s to the 80s to the 70s to the 60s, I will be doing the 50s pretty soon. I still have one more book to finish for that decade, but meanwhile I want to bounce back to a decade that I read back when I first decided to embark on this journey of reading all of the Newbery winners. My kids were fairly young. We were making regular trips to the library, and I remember asking the librarian if she ever put up a poster that had all the Newbery winners on it, because I remembered back when I was a kid, one of the first things the librarian showed me in the 5th grade on my first solo trip to the library was the Newbery poster, which featured, I think that year, it featured Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim as the winner. So I knew that those existed. I didn't know if they still made them, and she scrounged around her office and came up with one and put it up in the library. And I remember the one she put up was the 2009 winner was the featured book then, which is right here. So I know that these were some of the first books that I read when I was starting on this project. So because of that, I didn't remember some of the details. Well, I didn't remember much about a few of them, but some of them have really stuck with me. So there's a good mix here of books from 2001 to 2009, and I'm excited to share this video with you. So let's start with the year 2000, which of course is a book that was published in 1999. This is Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis. I loved this book. I think I've listened to this twice now, and even that second time was a few years ago. So I'm due for a reread on this one. This is set in 1936 in Flint, Michigan. It is about a 10-year-old boy whose mother has died without telling him who his biological father was. She did leave some clues behind, some treasured items that he keeps in a suitcase, and so one day he decides, or I think one night, he decides to take his suitcase and leave the living situation that he's in and embark on a journey to find his real father, or to find his father, based on the clues that his mother left behind. And it is a delightful story. Christopher Paul Curtis just has such a way with humor and heartfelt topics, and he just did a great job with this book. Since then, I have read another book by him that was an honor book in the 1990s. In fact, I mentioned this when I did my video about Newbery winners of the 90s. This is The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. This is fantastic. I loved both of these books. And recently, I learned from another booktuber that he's got another Newbery honor book that I think was from 2008. I have not read it. It's called Elijah of Buxton, and it is set during slavery times. So I'm super excited to read that. I just can't wait, because both of these were fantastic, and I highly recommend both of them. So let's move on now to the winner from 2001, which of course was published in the year 2000. This is book 2 in a trilogy. Now, when I first read this, I think there was only 2 in the series, and I later learned that another book had been added to this series, and it was just as delightful as the first 2. The first book, now these don't have to be read in this order, but why not read them both? They're fantastic. The first book is a Newbery honor book from the 90s. It's A Long Way from Chicago. It's about a brother and sister who are sent to live with their grandmother for the summer. And the grandmother is quite a character. Her name is Grandma Dowdle. She is a woman of what I would consider a morally gray character. I don't agree with everything she does, but she's hilarious. And in this book, the sister is sent to live with Grandma Dowdle for a year. And I believe it's her senior year of high school, which I cannot even imagine that would be, I just can't imagine having to do that. And yet my own mother was, she went to her, after going many years to school in one small country school, ended up going to live with relatives and did her senior year in a larger town in another state. So, I know it happens. I know that it's done. I know that my own daughter would not have wanted to do that at all. Although, since her senior year was during COVID, she kind of felt like she did, because she spent her senior year at home doing college, doing senior year at plus college classes on the computer. But anyway, we live in another era. This, I believe, is historical, and I'm not sure what the era is or what the decade is, but it's probably 50s or 60s when it's set. I'm just guessing by what I remember about it. Anyway, there is a third book. It is set at Christmas. I can't remember the title offhand, but it is set a few years after these two, and Grandma Dowdle is the link between all three books. And of course, the grandchildren have grown up, and now a family has moved in next door to her, and it's their story of their experiences with Grandma Dowdle. And all three books are very good. I would recommend any of them. They're delightful. And so then the next book I want to talk about is from it's the Newbery winner from 2002. I have to be very careful because these paperbacks here want to domino on me. This one I did not reread recently, but I remember really enjoying this book. It's set in Korea in the 12th century. It's about a boy who is apprenticing with a pottery maker, and it is his story, and I just remember it being so intense and heartbreaking and compelling, and I would really recommend it. It is by Linda Sue Park. It's called A Single Shard, and I have read a couple of other books by her since then that I enjoyed as well. Probably neither as much as this one, but I would highly recommend it. It was really great. And so then the next one I also really loved. This is Crispin and the Cross of Lead by Avi. This is the first in a trilogy. I've read all three books. It's about a boy in, it's a medieval England. Trying to see, I've already forgotten when it's set. It's 14th century medieval England. So he is the illegitimate son of a lord, and apparently there are no other heirs, and this lord dies. So now this boy, his life is in danger. He is helped out by a friend who has a pet bear, I believe. And well, is it a pet bear? I think his name, he also is called Bear, so I don't know which is which or if they're both right. Anyway, it's been a while since I've read these. They were just wonderful. I really enjoyed them. They're very intense. This boy is definitely in danger of his life, and it's his survival story of trying to escape and get away from the faction of people who are trying to kill him. And I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. In fact, one day I went to sub for maybe it was an older elementary class, or maybe it was a 6th grade middle school class. I can't remember now. But they were reading this book as in their reading unit, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. That's a great book to read and learn about the history of the times and everything. So definitely would recommend this one, and yeah, you should read it. If 14th century England sounds interesting to you, then I would definitely read it. Then the next one is, let's see, this is 2001, 2, 3, 4. So the Newbery winner from 2004 is by Kate DiCamillo. I'll get that in just a second. I knew that was bound to happen. This is The Tale of Despereaux. It is about a little mouse who inadvertently causes the death of the queen in this fantasy world that the book is set. And because it happens when she is eating soup, the king declares that there is to be no more soup in the kingdom. And it just goes from there. I remember when I read this several years ago, I remembered thinking that it feels almost like two different books. And I think I listened to it on audio. And in fact, today, as I was just flipping through it, there are some illustrations, which are kind of neat. But I noticed that it is, in fact, divided into 4 books. So that makes sense, because we do have the story of Despereaux and his origins. We have the story of the king and queen and princess. And then the later then when Despereaux meets the princess, who is very sad because, her mother has died, and there's and just the whole kingdom is very sad and mourning the loss of the queen. So it was a very interesting book, more of a fantasy story because the animals talk, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Some of you may have seen the movie, and I would recommend either one. I thought the movie was great. The book is great. Kate DiCamillo has a couple of other Newbery, she's got one other Newbery winner, and I think a Newbery Honor book. Oh yes, Because of Winn-Dixie is a Newbery Honor book from 2001. And that is a historical novel, more realistic. No, it's not a fantasy book. Some of you may have seen that movie as well. Now, her book that's a Newbery winner from later in the 20-teens somewhere, Flora and Ulysses, it is about a girl and a squirrel. And so it has more similarities to this book than Because of Winn-Dixie. But Kate DiCamillo is a great author. I've read several of her books and have really enjoyed everything that I've read by her. So if you haven't read this, I would recommend picking it up. Now, since I mentioned honor books, I did write down a few. I don't own any of the honor books from this decade. There are some from 2001 that I'm interested in. The Wanderer by Sharon Creech and Joey Pigza Loses Control by Jack Gantos. Jack Gantos has a Newbery winner from, I think, 2011, so I won't be talking about it here, but I've been recently rereading it and just remembering how delightful it is. So I'm very interested to read more by him. And then, of course, I mentioned Because of Winn-Dixie. I have read that, but I don't own it. I used to own it, and I think I gave it to a student. So then the next one I wrote down that's an honor book that I've read is from 2003, so the same year that Crispin was the winner, and that is Hoot by Carl Hiaasen. Carl Hiaasen is a Florida author who writes mostly adult books with a lot of swearing, but he also writes some middle grade books with no swearing. And I've read all of those. I've read some of his adult books as well, but Hoot, all of his books have an environmental theme, and Hoot is no exception. There is a boy who is trying to save these burrowing owls from being destroyed, and there's a construction site that is about to bury them, and it's a very good story. So I'm going to pause this and set the books back up, and I'll be right back. All right, so the next one is from the year I always lose track about midway. Let me just look rather than counting. Let me just look here. It was published in 2004, so it is the Newbery winner of 2005. This is Kirakira by Cynthia Kadohata. And I hope I'm saying that right. This is, I did reread this recently. I listened to it on audio again. I knew it had something to do with chickens, and what it is, it's historical, set back in the, it's set in Georgia, and it is about a family who are from, what country are they from? They are Asian, and they are making a life for themselves in Georgia, and it is during the time in America before industrial workers were unionized, and the family, the parents of the family both work in the chicken industry, and you do need to have kind of a strong stomach for this one. It's not super graphic, but you do hear some of the horror stories about the workers in that industry at that time, when they were really taken advantage of and paid very little and made to do just horrific jobs just to feed their family. But that's not the only thing going on in this story. It's about two sisters. Well, it's really about one of the daughters, and her sister has an illness. And so, and I think they may have a little brother as well. Now that I said that, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's just the story of their family and what they have to do to survive and to try to help keep the sister healthy, and the frustrations and the heartbreak. It's a very compelling story, and I would recommend it. I was just horrified with some of the working conditions that are described here, and I have no doubt that that they were very true, and probably there are still situations like that today that exist. It's sad to say. I wouldn't be shocked at all. But anyway, I thought that it was definitely worthy of the award. Now, also from the same year, one of the honor books is a book I have read. I don't own it, but it's Al Capone Does My Shirts. And as I recall, I think that's about a boy whose parents they live and work at a prison. It's the prison where Al Capone is incarcerated, and so hence the name of the story. I don't remember a lot about it. I should reread that one. I think it's part of a series, but in more recent years, I've read another book that was similar to that called Breakout, and now I can't even think of the author of that one, but it was one of the Sunshine State books, and it is about it's about a group of kids who live on a prison village because their parents work for the prison. And there's a breakout, so they're all having to live basically on lockdown because prisoners have broken out and they have to stay safe. So that was a really good book as well. So anyway, how I got to that, but anyway, this was worth picking up. Okay, then the next one is debatable about whether it's worth picking up. This one has gotten a lot of hate on, at least from some of the reviews I read on Goodreads. It's kind of like a middle grade Seinfeld. It's a story about nothing. I think there is some plot in there somewhere, but it's really just kind of a coming of age story of a couple of friends, and it's not super memorable because I didn't remember anything about it from when I read it several years ago. I have listened to it again recently, and I still don't really remember much about it. I didn't hate it, but anyway, it's just, there's just not a lot that's memorable about it. I'm not going to tell you not to read it. There were a couple of reviews by people that said they really loved it, but they could understand why people wouldn't like it. So I don't know. It's called Crisscross. It's by Lynne Perkins. Let me just read on the back. It says, she was thinking that the grass could really be greener on the other side of the fence. It depended on who was standing in the grass. Maybe you had to go take a look. So it's that kind of a reflective book. And so then moving on, this one I did enjoy, The Higher Power of Lucky by Susan Patron. It wasn't my favorite by any means, but not bad. This is about a girl who lives in a very small dying town, as I recall. Let me think now. Let's see. Well, now I can't remember. It was fun. Gracious, I should have reviewed this one before. I actually did listen to this one earlier in the month, but I went through it kind of quick. I just remember. Oh, okay. Now I remember. Okay, it's about a girl who is her mother has died, and her father sends her to live with his first wife. So she's not really a stepmother, but she does become her guardian. And they live in this almost like a dust bowl kind of a town. And that's what I can remember. Oh my goodness. Let me pause for just a second. Okay, it's coming back to me now. It's really not that forgettable, but I just have a lot in my brain at this moment, I suppose. Okay, so this girl, I believe her name is Lucky, and she is from I think this is set in the 60s, maybe late 60s, and she's from this small town, and I guess to make a little extra money, she picks up after all of the different 12-step groups that there are in this little town. It's hard to believe that there are this many 12-step groups in her town, but she cleans up after them because like there's one joke where this one particular group leaves their trash and their cigarette butts laying around on the ground. So she goes and picks those up before the Smokers Anonymous, the people are trying to quit smoking before they meet because they don't want to see all these cigarette butts laying around. So she basically eavesdrops on all of these different meetings. She has a place where she can hide out and wait for the meeting to be over. And so she hears all these different conversations, and she, I guess one of the 12 steps is to find your higher power. So she contemplates on that and starts, really kind of reflecting on how to find her higher power and just, kind of a coming of age. She does live with her father's first wife. Her father is still living, but I guess he just didn't feel equipped to take care of her. I believe her mother, she has grown up there, and her mother may have stepped on a snake and was killed by the snake. And so now her father's first wife has come there. She is French, and she's come there to live and take care of Lucky. And Lucky is not sure that Brigitte will want to continue on and stay with her because she hears little bits of conversation here and there that makes her think that Brigitte wants to go back to France and open a cafe. And so the whole story is just about her kind of just coming to terms with life and what will she do if Brigitte decides to leave. And I think at one point she decides that she's just going to leave, and I don't know where she's going to go, maybe to find her father, I'm not sure. And she sets off across the desert, but there's this other little boy who is her little friend, and he tries to follow her, so she realizes he's trying to follow her, so she has to get him back home, and there's just a whole bunch of things that are going on. I've probably said too much, and it's not a long book. But anyway, it's basically a coming-of-age story set in the 60s. And if that sounds interesting to you, then you might want to give this a try. It's short. It won't take you very long to read it. And that's about all, probably more than I should say about it. So the next one is, I'm going to have to pause for this one because the book is oversized and is crammed in my shelf back there. So if you made it past the ramble, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with me. This is the winner from 2008. This is Good Masters, Sweet Ladies, Voices from a Medieval Village by Laura Amy Schlitz, illustrated by Robert Bird. This was written by a school librarian, and this is really delightful. I didn't remember a lot about it, but I'm so glad that I went back and read it again. It is basically a series of one-person plays. I think one or two of them are for two people, for two voices, but each one is connected. They are, all of the characters are young people, like they're the son of this person or the daughter of that person, and each of them are connected in one way or another. And I just love how it's laid out. So, for instance, we have here Hugo, the Lord's nephew. And then the next one is Taggart, the blacksmith's daughter. So then we learn how she knows and interacts the Lord's nephew. And then we go to the next one, and it is about... Will, the plowboy, and we learn about his relationship to the blacksmith's daughter. So each one connects back to another one. Some are longer than others, but they're each written so that they can be performed. I believe there are 17 different, either 17 characters or 17 stories. She wrote this for students because I guess they were studying this time period, and she wanted them to be able to each have a starring role in their play. And she said there's not any plays that have 17 different starring roles, and so she made a starring role for each one of them. And I just thought it was such a great idea. I love how it's put together. The illustrations are great, and it's definitely worth reading and taking a look at. I would love to see it performed. I really would. Here is the manor. This is a medieval manor. England, 1255 is the setting. So each of the characters are from this manor. And I just thought it was great. I would recommend it. Okay, and now we have reached the last one from the year 2009. This is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Now, this is a book that I would never have picked up in a million years if it had not been a Newbery winner. And I ended up really enjoying it. The first part is a little bit intense, a lot intense. It is about it's about a boy. His name is Bod. At the time the story opens, he's a toddler, and someone has broken into his home and killed his parents and the rest of his family, and they are seeking to kill him, but somehow he gets away, crawls out of his bed, out of the house, and makes his way to the cemetery. And there he is befriended by the ghosts living in the cemetery. And the cemetery turns out to be the only safe place for him. The killer, I guess, cannot approach him in the cemetery. And he doesn't know that, but the ghosts all know that. And so he somehow is compelled by the ghosts to live there. He grows up there. He's raised by the ghosts. And it was such an entertaining story. It does get dark at times, but I did read a review from someone who was really looking for more of a horror story. They said that, a creepy story, that the only really creepy part was in the beginning with the killer, and then after that, it wasn't scary enough, or wasn't creepy enough. It's not the type of book that I would normally pick up at all, but like I said, I did really enjoy it, and I'm glad that I read it. So if you like fantasy books like this, then you might want to pick this up. I thought it was very entertaining. So I did want to mention one other Newbery winner. Oh, well, I had actually already mentioned it. From 2008, which was the same year as Good Master, Sweet Ladies, we have an honor book by Christopher Paul Curtis called Elijah of Buxton, and I think I mentioned that one earlier in the video. So that is it for the Newbery winners of the early 2000s. Have you read any of these? Are any of these on your TBR? Would you like to read any of these that now that you've heard about them? I did get a little rambly there in the middle, and I apologize for that. But anyway, it's been fun chatting about these books with you. Like I said, I read all of these several years ago when I first started this project, and so several years have passed, and I had to reread a few, and even then, I've got a lot of books spinning around in my brain, but it's a fun project, and I will now probably go back. The next video in the series will be the Newbery winners of the 1950s. I am in the middle of the last one that I have not finished, so that video should be coming before the end of the month, or by the end of the month. So that's all for this video. Let's chat about these books in the comments, and I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.